Welcome to Forestry Now, where we explore the forces impacting profitable and sustainable management of commercial forests and natural woodlands. I'm Dermot McNally. Today I speak with John Sherlock. As well as having a 49-acre forest, John owns Sherlogs Firewood and Craft Timber, which is based outside Navan in County Meath. John's business supplies firewood in the midlands and mills timber for resale, as well as offering a bespoke manufacturing service. If that wasn't enough, he's very active in the North East Forestry Group and also in a new initiative to bring sawmillers across Ireland together. So there's a lot to talk about, which is why I've split the interview in two parts. In this episode, we'll talk about what's happening in his forest right now and about the North East Forestry Group, where John's a former chair and current secretary. And in the second episode, we'll discuss John's firewood and timber milling business, as well as talking about the growing number of sawmills across Ireland, which can only be good news for every forest owner who wants to maximise timber revenue from broadleaf timber and diverse conifers. As always, links to what we discuss, as well as contact details, are available in the show notes below. Feel free to email me with feedback or suggestions at forestrynowpodcast@gmail.com. And finally, enjoy the conversation. John, thanks very much for taking the time to talk to me today.
No problem.
Maybe you'd start off by giving me a brief overview of what's actually happening in your own 49-acre forest there beside the firewood business.
Last February, as most people in Ireland with forestry were aware, we had a huge storm. For us, it meant that all the Sitka and Norway that we had was totally flattened. And when I say flattened, all you were left with was a ring of trees just literally around the edge of the forest. So, it was a big shock to us because we had 16 acres of ash. It got ash dieback at year 9. We had taken it out, replanted. It was coming along lovely. We had replanted with a mixture of stuff. We thought, well, now we're sailing on now. The forest is set where we're going. And we were doing the forest under continuous cover. The whole thing then changed. The whole plan had to revert back to a clearfell situation and get it out. So we were lucky in a way. We got our timber out, we got our timber sold, we got paid for it. I kept the pulp for our own firewood business, and I kept some of the pallet as well because we used some of the pallet for kindling. And we got the brash removed there towards the end of the summer. It's still on the roadside, and we're looking towards planting in January. We also had our small oak plantation. When the guys were there, we had the trees marked, so we got the chainsaw guys that were there to knock down the trees were marked for coming out. So they're actually still there to come out.
So you replanted your ash with 80% Sitka and then a bit of broadleaf, was that it?
I planted it, I'd say, with 75% Sitka. And, Dermot, I just say to people, when you do something first, we're all probably scant on knowledge. And the fact that I did it again, I did a little bit more to know what I wanted to do. So I looked at the operations we had, and I wanted to try and keep the Sitka that I planted in the fields that we could get in and out with machinery without impacting on the hardwoods. So we put in a slightly less Sitka in order to be able to put the hardwoods in what I would say corner fields and fields that wouldn't suit heavy equipment. And it actually has worked out lovely because you sort of have your fields towards the road have the hardwoods in it. We have cherry in some of them and we have red oak in the others. We put red oak behind a group of houses. We've actually shaped them. We did the cherry last summer and the red oak the previous winter. Coming along lovely. It was a second chance, and the thing is, you're looking now at trees 6, 7, 8 foot, 9 foot high. So that's what I just say to people that have ash. Get it out, because you're just looking at something dying. It's like looking at a sick animal, Dermot. You move it on and you get a new animal in and look at it growing. The same with the ash. Get it out, have a new plantation, have it growing again. There's nothing like looking at trees growing to lift your spirit.
Yeah, no, you're right. Time is money as well. And 3 years watching it die is 3 years that the new one can be growing. So your young Sitka then, it wasn't affected by the storm. It was too small, but your main block of Sitka in Norway came out. And what are you going to replant that main block with? And are you going to continue with the plan to go CCF?
I'm going to go with CCF. I'd love to put in some Douglas fir because we use a good bit of it here in our own sawmilling business, but I don't think the soil will lend itself to that. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to put in a mixture that the soil will carry. And the fact that we'll be putting in a certain percentage of Sitka, my opinion is that in time that there'll be less Sitka and more of the other minor conifers and more of the hardwoods. So that forest will evolve into a more natural state. And I would hope at that stage then it would have more ground stability.
Yeah, well, okay. Well, that ties in with where you were before this and your bit of, you mentioned cherry and red oak. They came in with the replanting of the ash.
Yeah.
And so how have they done in the soils? Because, sometimes you think, well, if you can't plant Douglas fir, can you manage cherry and red oak? How are they going?
Yeah, well, that was the better end of the farm that we planted, Dermot. My father originally planted the latter end of it. I used to always say to people, he said all that ever fed was 2 horses. I remember us with cattle in it, and they used to get red water and all these mad yokes from ticks. So you can imagine the type of land that was. So then the M3 motorway came through the remaining part of the farm, the biggest block, and divided it. So at that stage then I decided I was going to plant the far side of the motorway, and it was good land. That's why initially our forester was really anxious to put in the ash because he could see it was really going to grow. So then when we went going forward, we kept the best of it there for the cherry and the red oak, and it has just grown. It's really a super crop. Our Teagasc advisor, Kevin, when he heard I was putting red oak in, he says, you're going to have to be getting your pruning shears or your lopper out, he says, for that, because he said it just doesn't need minding. And we've done 2, a light shaping and a bit more of a formative shaping on it. And the same with the cherry. Cherry's coming along lovely.
Yeah.
And I suppose the reason I went with that was, and again, it's everybody's opinion. And, your thoughts and your opinions on forestry, and that's the one thing I like about forestry is everybody, as an owner, you can make decisions on your opinions. So I looked at what timber was going to come out of it, and I thought, well, cherry is a good timber, and it's a highly valued timber for furniture and stuff. And red oak, while it's not a true oak, it is an oak. And it's quick growing, and it's used a good bit in the States for flooring and stuff like that. So I was thinking it could be my ash, if you know what I mean. There'd be a bit of growth in it, and there is good growth in it. So
good, yeah. And you have the eye of a sawmiller as well, John, and that I suppose that gives you the extra insight. So when you look at the formative shaping now, the 2 shapings you've done on this young 9-year-old broadleaf, can you see that there's going to be a bit of sawlog there?
Yeah, that's something that I, as an owner, I think it's a lot easier to convince somebody, especially in your hardwoods, to do a bit of shaping on your hardwoods if they see what that shaping results in. And if they see what if they don't do the shaping, well, people have an opinion at the minute, and it's just simply because we're a young industry that I hear people saying, oh, well, such and such a hardwood is good for firewood. And I say, we never grew hardwood for firewood. We grew it for timber. We grew it for planks. Firewood is a waste coming off tenons. And the only reason people say that is because they haven't had any experience yet of selling any hardwoods for plank timber or beams or that. And that's what I say. We need to do that now so that in the future, even the tenons that come out could be used for something. I was shown it there recently. I was down looking at the oak that we took out. I had a 22 centimetre diameter oak came out because it was a wolf tree, but there was about 2 meters of it, 2.5 meters of it nice. So I'll probably make that into a beam. So there's the sort of stuff, and that brings the value up completely.
Yeah.
The finished
for
value.
Going, the other option was firewood.
Yeah, the other option was firewood.
Yeah. Another question for you, John. When I was there, you did an open day at the forest at one stage, and I remember you had some alder and maybe a bit of birch growing around the fringe of your main conifer block. at the time, if memory serves me right. Did they survive the storm? And
No.
is there any potential in them from a timber point of view?
So it's actually all alder, believe it or not.
All alder.
Yeah, they survived the storm. They were just like that row that you were looking at. It was a double row of alder, and I think it was either that the forester in his wisdom, it was actually Aidan McKenna did it. He did a real good job. Now I have to say, Aidan at the time, he put them in, I think, for a little bit of shelter because he was probably thinking down the line. Believe it or not, there were like sentries at the edge of the forestry. At the edge of forest, the only things that was left standing was the row of alder and the plantation of alder. Now we've tinned the alder twice. I actually was going to. We'd had marked it in. Anytime the machines came in to work on the Sitka, we did a little bit of work on the alder because while the machine was there, it made economic sense to do it. The alder are coming along. They're getting a bit of a girth on them. I would say yes. There will be sawlog out of them, and again, we're looking at what are we going to use the alder for. It's not wonderful firewood. Some people like it for barbecuing or something like that. There is people look for it, but as a sawlog, it has potential for saunas, for cladding for the interior saunas.
Oh,
It has the same. And it's a long word, and I can't really finish it off. It's thermo something as regards heat retention, or very similar to Western red cedar. And Western red cedar is phenomenally expensive and to buy. So what they've done is, and there's a couple of companies making saunas now in Ireland, and what they're doing is they're cladding the interior with alder. Now, obviously, it wouldn't be good enough to make a barrel type sauna because you'd have the outside of it exposed to the weather. But and the fact that it's going to be that for saunas, you're using maybe for cladding, you're using 100 by 25 mil board. So your opportunities to get that type of board out of alder, I think, are there. I think we'll find a use for it because we've a lot of it in this country. There's a lot of it planted.
Yeah, a lot of it planted, and unfortunately, unless we find a use, it goes for firewood.
Yeah.
This is the inevitability, yeah. So, John, you've got a chance now with your new planting of your windblow area. What broadleaves are you going to put in there then? So you've got the eye of a sawmiller. You know that you have to deal with a certain type of soil condition. What broadleaves are going to be the chosen ones?
We're looking at oak. If the ground would stick it, I'd like to stick in some beech. Maybe a bit of hornbeam, a good few of the minor conifers if I could. I definitely will put in Western red as a Western red cedar. I underplanted some of the Sitka as an experiment. Believe it or not, they were flying. They absolutely love that soil. So if we could get them in, they're a high value timber, and that's where we'd be going.
Is there deer in and around that part of Meath?
Fingers crossed there is no deer in our area. In the surrounding area, there has been deer. If we can dodge the bullet on the deer, it'd be fantastic because I know other people and they're tormented with deer.
Yeah, well, the species you're talking about putting in there wouldn't be helped with deer.
They'd be like silage to them.
Okay, John, well, can we move on then to the North East Forestry Group? You're the current secretary and a former chair. How many members are now in the group, and where has the group been most effective for owners that get involved?
At the minute, we've up on 100 members, and believe it or not, we've had a huge surge in the last year because of the storm. It was formed in 2013. Initially, there was about 20 or 30, and we've maintained numbers like that. The storm really was an eye opener for us all because it brought people that joined that we never knew were there, and they never knew the advantage of joining a forest owner group. In that, first of all, the way I look at it is, I look at a lot of the members now with the North East Forestry Group as friends, as people that when I hit a crisis like we had this year, we all ring and we talk. And the fact of talking alone from a mental health point of view and a worry and something like that, to know that there's somebody else in the same boat, to know that there's somebody else out there thinking the same thing, even just talking about it helps. But the other thing is the experience of some other, because we're all first generation forest owners. we're all on the one journey, and some of us a little bit further ahead. That's the advantage I see. We're able to find out what sort of money timber is making, real prices. We're able to talk about harvesting availability. We were able to go, for example, we had a wind throw event down in a large forest, and one of our members there, another leading light, Peter Farley, in his forest, very, very informative. We had everybody down there within 2 weeks of the event happening. We've moved from trying to find people to, liaison with other members about getting their timber sold. Then we looked at looking forward to replanting. So we actually were down with None So Hardy there 3 weeks ago. We had a bus with members. We all went down and went round the 2 sites at None So Hardy where we operate from. And, that was an education in itself, because we were able to talk to the guys directly and say, I was thinking of doing this. Would these trees suit that soil? And they were able to give us a little bit more because they're growing these plants. And it was really, and everybody, now fair dues to None So Hardy, because Lara and Tig took a day off to bring us round, because their 2 locations are well spread out. And that was really, really informative as well. So these are the sort of things we do, along with running our KTG projects. We've been running them since they started in 2019. This year was probably the best, in that we were very lucky. We had a very good facilitator there, Jim Crowley, who had worked for Quilcha and had done a lot of wind throw in Donegal in his working career. So he was like another, what I'd call, guru that we were able to bounce our questions off. And it was great, saying, well, I was thinking of doing that, and you'd see the look on Jim and he'd go, and you'd know he wasn't sort of grooving towards what you were thinking, but he'd say, well, right, yeah, well, and he'd give you the options on what possibly could go pear-shaped, And the one thing was, our membership coordinator and part-time secretary, or nearly full-time secretary along with me now, Anne White, was saying, when the KTG finished, all the people who had participated and want to know was, when was the next meeting? When was the next event? So they had learned something from it. And again, a lot of it was peer-to-peer learning.
We'll get back to the conversation with John Sherlock in a second. But if you're buying or selling forestry, go to forestsales.ie. That's where you'll find forests and farmland for sale across the country and all the information you need to make a decision. That's forestsales.ie. Now, back to the interview with John. The North East Forestry Group hit the headlines with the first group to be certified. Looking back on that certification of your forests, what would you take away from it, and what was the main benefit of getting certified, John, in retrospect?
We looked at this certification back in 2015. We saw what was coming eventually, and it will come, as in the private timber is going to be outstripped Quilcha supply, and unless we have certified timber, it can't be sold as certified timber. If a sawmill is selling timber as certified, they're allowed to mix 30% uncertified timber with their certified timber, and that brings it out as 100% certified, as a mixed certificate. Now, we looked at it and we said, right, let's see what it's like for private forest owners to get certified. So we went to the Department of Agriculture, who I must say have been very supportive of the group. We went and we engaged with them, and then we decided that we would run with them as the raw material for the project. So we brought in other more expert people to work with us. So we got certified. It was unfortunate then, after the first year, that the funding sort of did dry up and wasn't continued. So 12 of us, the 12 apostles, as I call us, that had spent the previous 9 months having meetings. I'm looking out the window here in my yard. We actually had several meetings here at night during the summer, sitting around on pallets, going through what we needed and the whole process. So it came to the end of the year, and we were going to have to get our audit done, and there was no money forthcoming. So I got them all together. We got them together, and we decided we'd self-fund it ourselves. So we did self-fund the audit ourselves. We were very lucky. We got a forester to work with us pro bono. We've kept the cert going. We then worked with the IFO, the Irish Forest Owners. So the cert is still active. The department have rejoined the funding process, and we're up to a membership of over 20 now, all certified. And so we've got new members in. So from the initial 12 who would have been highly motivated towards getting certified, we then have moved on to take on what we'd call your normal forest owner who wouldn't have any experience certification on being certified. That's another lesson. It's not that there's a lot of work in it. There's just a bit of gathering on paperwork.
And John, there is going to come a day when the certification is required. But apart from gathering the paperwork and getting involved, what did you learn out of it? Or have you improved your own forest management processes?
I think the benefits apart from the actual selling of the timber is unbelievable. Because you look at every aspect of your forest. For example, look at health and safety. So when you have somebody coming into your forest, under certification, they're insured, they have the certs. It should be the way it should be in our forests, in all our forests. But because you're certified, you're ensuring that all of that is done prior to an operation. So you know that so the standards of the work being done will rise. The other thing too is you're aware of the fact that you're looking at water courses, which in the felon license you should be doing. But all of these things, because they're documented, because you're doing a risk assessment, you're doing safety statements, everything like that is itemized, and you have to watch it. The other thing, ecology, biodiversity, these are built in. They're core pillars of certification. And without actually thinking about it, you're actually improving your biodiversity. You're looking after the environment. You're looking at environmental constraints, a lot of which is part and parcel of the felon license process. But you as a forest owner are becoming aware of these things. And that's the thing. So up until now, your forests are dealt with. And a good few of the certification guys, the foresters look after their forests. And the way I look at it is we're all aware of these things now. We're more aware than we were. We don't have to, a lot of us, because the work is done by our foresters, we don't have to actually get into the nitty gritty, but we're all aware of it too.
It's almost like a training program in a sense for owners, and bringing you totally aware of everything that has to happen.
And stuff that you wouldn't think of. We had one of our members and he was doing a bit of spot spraying. And when the auditor came, it was actually our manager came to have a look at the site, and she noticed there was spraying around the gate. And she says, "What's the story here?" Oh, he said, "I had a bit of spray left in the can," he says, "and I said I sprayed the weeds around the gate." And she went, "Well, that's not really what that's another operation, and that could get into water courses." So that was a simple non-conformity that we addressed. But what I'm saying is now he's aware of stuff like that you wouldn't think about it, you just do it. Now you think about something before you do it.
I got an email from someone at the NEFG about the Future Forest Owners Initiative.
Yeah.
Can you talk anything about that, John?
I'm in my 60s. I'll be 64 now next week. And a lot of the members look at me as one of the younger members. So you can imagine the age profile of our group. But the one thing about the forest owners in our group, they all seem to be sprightly enough lads, There's none of them seem to be carrying a lot of weight. And I'd say if you were involved with a forest owner, you don't carry a lot of weight. But we're all looking at where do we go from here. And especially now, if you look at my situation where I'm replanting now, that'll not be my forest to see. And I was walking through a forest down there of one of our members during the KTG, and it was the same age as mine. And I was walking through this lovely stand of sitya, and I was saying, well, I won't stand in a sitya in a plantation like that for another 22 years if God is good to me and I'm still here. And I was thinking of my father who planted our original sitka. He never actually lived to see it, which was a bit sad in a way, but that's life. So I was looking at saying, well, like the next generation, so I have a daughter and a son who will be involved in that forest, and we're looking at what will we do. So my daughter is involved, she's on the committee in the North East Forestry Group. So we applied for funding to do a next generation project. We've done surveys. So basically what we're looking at is, where's the gaps in knowledge in forestry? What do the next generation want? What do they think we should focus on for them as future forest owners? And it's all very well for John Sherlock and all the rest of the guys in their senior years deciding we will do a next generation project, we don't know what they want. And as you and I were speaking earlier about the generational changes in workforce and jobs. So we need to see what the next generation want from the forests they're going to own. Are they looking at timber sales? Are they looking at from an environmental point of view, or are they looking at from a resource of recreation? So it's surprising some of the stuff that has come in, and that is environmental. Obviously, income is high on their list, but there's a lot of other stuff that has cropped up. So from that, then we're hoping to move forward and form a nucleus of next generation forest owners, so that they would then, all these sons, daughters of forest owners, they'd directly communicate among themselves, that they'd form a peer-to-peer group, and that they then would then come to us and be saying, well, this is what we want. So then we try and design something, or get our group focused on bringing them people in to learn. If they can pick up and join in, and that knowledge can be shared. And the issue is, if you look at it, most of that age group, they're flat out working, paying for mortgages, childminders. So the method of education will have to be when they have time. It'll have to fit into a busy life.
And John, maybe this is a good time to talk about the schools project.
Yeah. Within our sawmill, we've done a couple of projects here. Within our sawmilling project, we got funding there again from the department under the forestry promotion. We have done a small sawmilling initiative, but we got within that we had a bursary to give timber to some local schools within our North East Forestry Group area, and we supplied some of the schools with that timber. They loved it, and then we got involved, as you do, with the woodwork teachers. And then the woodwork teacher said, would there be any chance we could bring the people who are using the timber out to look around the forest? And then they all came out around our forests. And then we said, well, you know what? There's potential here. So we applied last year, and we started doing a schools project. So basically we had 8 committed people of the group. We threw it open the group and we whittled it down to 8 committed people. So what we did was we designed. Now this was an interesting thing as well about this project. The project provided the signs, which one of our woodwork teachers did a fantastic job on. I couldn't believe it. He has QR codes that if they're out there, they don't have to be looking and scribbling. They can look at the forest and get the information from the signs. So we said, right, we'll provide the signs, but you have to go off and get the schools, and you have to put in your paths, and you have to do. And they went off and did it. So it's one of these projects where the group was only providing a tiny percentage of the actual effort. The forest owners were providing the other. So the 8 had to go off and get their schools and get them lined up to come and do visits. They had to do their paths. So we did an initial path. We worked out the length of the path. Then we had all the signs for all the different areas. So then we had school tours, and so we all had to get a school to come out. So we've had a school out on all our sites, and it was very, very successful. When I get my forest re-established, and obviously there is some of it still standing, we'll resume with the school projects, because there's a lot of schools interested in coming out. And we see it possibly as maybe an income stream for forest owners. I think there's huge scope there, Dermot.
John, was there any issue with the insurance? Was anyone thinking, am I going to let people into the forest here?
Within our forest owner group, we have event insurance. So we worked it through that, and the schools have a certain amount of insurance as well. There's obviously protocols. You do your paperwork, you do your risk assessment, you do your inspections, you do your meta statements, and you also would what we did was we had the school teachers round looking at the site before they came. And the other thing is, within the legislation or the rules of the schools, a teacher has to accompany them. So, and we did a health and safety talk before the event as well. Well, you have a responsibility that that they're going to be safe. If you invite somebody in, you don't have stuff lying around that or trees, that branches going to poke their eyes out or stuff like that.
And John, when you say creating pathways, can you explain how that happened? Because when we go into certain age of forest, the devil on earth wouldn't get through them. So how did you get groups into these forests?
Yeah, well, so what we did was, the criteria for the actual to have a schools project was you would have to have a semi-mature forest anyway. You'd have had to have a proper forest road. You'd have to have parking. Now, they did come in a minibus, but obviously the teachers and you'd have to have adequate parking. So we all had to look at our sites first, at the sites that were. So obviously there was a lot of that sort of prior to commitment. We then looked at what they had. Would it be suitable? Would it be interesting? You can have a monoculture walk, but ideally you want a variance of species. Some of us were blessed with inspection paths. We altered them. We actually crossed in our own forest on the walk. We crossed a deep enough ditch that had been done during the grant when my father cleaned the land years ago, drained the land. So I was looking at this as, I'm going to have to make a little footbridge to go across it. That was another thing within the project, Dermot, was a footbridge. So one of the school teachers designed a footbridge. He did a plan for it, one that you could bring the components down the forest and screw it together. So that's actually, we did a leaflet on the whole schools project, or on the schools walk project, and that's on it. So the design is there as well. So any other forest owner wants to have a little thing, they can make the bridge, the design. He even has the bolts and the screws and the whole lot. So, stuff like that. I had because I'm blessed with lads working with me and they like to go down the forest and all the time. There was 2 lads down there for 2.5 days. They're getting it ready. So there is a bit of work involved in it,
Yeah, strimming pathways and getting we access paths in.
Yeah, and if there's bits of hollows and that, maybe throwing a bit of wood chip in them, or looking at the path and going around them, or taking roots, or covering up roots with a bit of brash or stuff like that.
Let me pause the interview to ask you this. Could your business benefit from increased profile in the forestry sector? If so, maybe you should advertise in Ireland's only dedicated forestry podcast, with new episodes coming out every 2 weeks. So get in touch with Forestry Now to see how we can make it work for you. Back to the chat with John. Is there anything else about the NEFG that you want to mention? Because, it occurs to me in a way I probably could have done just an interview on the NEFG alone without talking about any of the other plates you're spinning here.
We're very lucky in a way that we have the people we have within a group, because we have all these people who, even though they're of a certain age, a lot of them weren't foresters before they were foresters. So you have people like lecturers, you have ex-school teachers, you have ex-engineers. You have this huge availability of skills that can be called upon, and they're all willing to work. So within our group, if we want to do something, we can sit down and say, well, sometimes we react to what people say. So at the minute, we have people who are thinning their hardwoods, and they're saying, well, I can get people with chainsaws, but I can't get somebody to get anything out. I can't get stuff out because the price of our forwarders, to bring it in, you have to bring low loaders. So we have an application in under the funding with the department to get a group forwarder, a small little scale forwarder for the group. But stuff like that. So the thing is, you listen to your members, you see what they need, and you see, can you help them? But at the same time, the fact that we have a good, strong group, you have people coming up with suggestions of initiatives, and that keeps people involved. And the group structure is fantastic now. It really is. It is. And it evolves. It evolves from what some groups, and with the group structure throughout Ireland, some groups are active, some aren't. Some would be engaged in commercial activity. It just depends on the group. But the peer-to-peer, and like there's not a day goes past but there's somebody ringing somebody. Like I'd have lads ringing me, did you get planting yet? What's the story on your plants? What are you putting in? Then ring another lad, a lad looking for to sell a bit of timber. Would you ring such and such? All of this sort of stuff, Dermot. Networking.
Yeah, no, very good. And on the KTGs then, just to finish off, are the KTGs limited to someone who hasn't done a KTG, or can you do more than one if there's a different topic?
If you haven't done one for 3 years, you can do it again. This year, because we obviously were focusing as much as we could within the criteria of the programme, we're focusing on the windthrow. Department of Agriculture allowed people who had done a previous earlier than that to engage in the KTG to the forest owner. Initially, when we did the KTG, when the structure was set up, if you couldn't attend it, a close family member or somebody involved in the forest management could attend. And there's obviously some travelling money given, some expenses for travelling within the KTG to the forest owner. And somewhere along the line, it became that only the forest owner could attend. Well, 3 years later, I was looking at my daughter doing it. And if you look at it, Dermot, again, what we were talking about earlier, they're in their 30s. They need to get babysitters. They need to pay for petrol to go to these outings. They need to make time. Well, they're entitled to that few bob to pay for a babysitter. So I think there is a commitment on them and their time to do it, and they're excluded. What I like about it is it's a bottom-up programme. So when we all start the first meeting, we all ask and say, right, lads, what do you want to focus on this time? Right, we have the mandatory subjects to cover, but we have a little bit of leeway on what we focus on. We've done one on certification. This year we did it on windthrow. In fact, the one on certification was oversubscribed as well. But within the KTG, if you're holding a KTG, you have to spend a bit of time. In other words, that if you're focusing it on certification, that you get people in, and we have got experts in who can talk about the certification process and all of that. So you can't just hold a KTG and say, we'll do it on this subject. You have to think about what you can deliver within that project, that actual 7 modules. But they're a great learner. They're absolutely fantastic.
Yeah. No, I did one with Aidan McKenna.
Yeah.
Really good. And it strikes me that if I have a child who's 23 and wants to learn about forestry, and they don't have their own herd number, and they don't have their own forest officially, they're kind of excluded unless there's a bit of flexibility there.
Yeah, and I'm sure Aidan said that as well. I'm sure Aidan, it's just, it would widen the pool, and, we're not talking, and I don't think it was that there was any hookery going on with the money. It could have been state aid, something like that. But by forest owners, I just think the money is very small. It's not as if they're getting as if they're going to retire on it. It's only a few bob.
Nobody's going to that there in the 75 quid.
No,
there's just nobody.
Not. They're going there
because they want to learn about forestry. Yeah.
That's what they're going. And if they get the money, well and good. But what I'm saying, the people, if you look at the next generation, if they chose to attend it, I think they are entitled to the bloody money. They're probably more. They probably need it more than you or me, Ed, now, to tell you the truth,
So that wraps up the first part of my interview with John Sherlock, and links to topics discussed are in the show notes below. In the second part of the interview, we'll be looking at John's firewood and sawmilling business, as well as the bespoke timber manufacturing service he offers. We'll also touch on the new Sawmillers Association that John's involved in. So that's it for now. Thanks for listening, and please like, subscribe and share with colleagues.